G'day everyone, it's Michael Partis from Assure Global Plus. If this is your first time tuning in, we are an asset resolution and debt recovery company that's been around for 50 years. Today, what we're going to do is do something slightly differently to the rest of our videos. Traditionally, we've talked about what do you do when people owe you money, but what happens when you owe money to somebody else? First and foremost, I'd like to introduce you to Chinelle. And Chinelle, it'd be great to learn a little bit more about your business.
Oh, thank you, Michael, for the lovely introduction. I feel very privileged because you are considered one of the best brains in the industry, and the fact that you wanted me to do a YouTube video with you, like I'm truly honoured. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I love what you do. I love what your company stands for. And a lot of people I'm finding, especially in the broker space, very caught up with obviously cash flow issues. Now, at Wardle Consultancy Services, we work with a number of lawyers, accountants, trustees, insolvency practitioners. And unfortunately, there's just not enough knowledge out there for consumers as well as business owners and directors as to what to next. Okay. And what I mean by that is you are fantastic in your space to actually get people on track to collect invoices and outstanding debt. However, while that's in process and you're chasing the funds, these entities are struggling with cash flow. And unfortunately, the major banks often actually aren't really forthcoming in helping them financially because they can't see a good balance in the bank account. So what we do at Wardle is we work with the likes of, companies like yours, only the reputable ones, I must say. I must add that. We then, try and look at avenues and solutions to help these companies survive given the current climate. We've just come out of COVID. Everyone's just got back to some sense of normality. Interest rates are shot, and I'm sure we're going to go into that in a little bit. But there's lots of solutions out there in the finance space. And only recently I aided 3 bankruptcy annulments. So these parties never lost their homes. So there's always financial solutions with other solutions. Because like I said, we partner with a number of firms. So there's always avenues that people can go down. It's just finding that trustworthy network like your company and mine to actually help them.
And it's sort of interesting, right? Because we talk a lot about, at Assure Global Plus, we talk about how do we help you get your cash flow management on track again, right? Based on people who owe you money. But it takes time to get long-term debt to actually pay you back, right? So that invoice has been out for 60 days. I know that it's going to take probably half that time on average to collect that invoice. In the meantime, you're still going to pay your bills, don't you?
You do.
So I think the advantage is of some of the stuff we're going to talk about today and some of the services you do is how do we create the opportunity to reduce that impact with some short-term outcomes, right? How do we actually consolidate those bits and pieces? Everyone keeps, in my opinion, seems to look at, the interest rates have come down, so therefore I'll be in a better position. But that's not really true, is it?
Absolutely not. Everyone's so fixated on the 0.25%, they actually, I guess, they lose the bigger picture, having, for example, your mortgage reduced by 100 a month, but the business actually needs an additional 5,000 a month to keep going. I think people get so fixated that interest rates are going to go down, we'll have some leeway, but actually it doesn't make much of a difference.
It's fascinating, right? Because the 0.25 is only about big asset or secured debt, isn't it? So it's your mortgage, not the rest of your loans.
Correct.
The rest of your loans don't come down because the Reserve Bank has reduced your interest rates by 0.25%, it doesn't change what your commercial debt is or your personal debt on that front. And a big part of what you do and your team does is actually help people find a way through that.
Yeah, recently we had a director approach us. He was hit with a DPN, okay? He did have a very good accountant that was actually organising a stable arrangement with the ATO. I'd like to just stress that. Do not ignore any notices. What ends up happening now is you might have your mortgage and you're paying that beautifully, interest rates have gone down. However, as a director linked to a business, you might be behind or whatever with your ATO debt, whether it's your BAS or your super contributions, your accountants failed to lodge, from 2 years back. The ATO are actually cracking down now, and a lot of directors I know are actually being hit up with a director penalty notice, advising them that they've got X amount outstanding that needs to be paid to prevent being default listed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, great that you're saving 200 now or 300 or 150 with the interest rate going down. It still doesn't negate the fact that you owe this money. So what I do is I work with a number of brokers in this space, as well as my partners in this space, to actually find a financial solution to actually help you pay this ATO debt and give you some cash flow relief so you can actually run the business without this panic. Do not ignore notices, and a lot of people do, and then it leads to enforcement and legal action. So let's work on solutions. Prevention's better than cure, right? So if we can come up with solutions while your company's helping to get cash flow in with the debt, let's not ignore what we can do financially to help actually move forward as well. It's two parts to this.
And it's really interesting you talk about that way, because what we know is traditional financiers aren't interested in helping you with your ATO debt. What they're interested in is consolidating all of your debt around bits and pieces. So the complication is for so many people is that they're actually talking to people about financing their ATO debt, which is a big no-no as far as the banks and financiers, the major banks and financiers is. What you're trying to do is restructure everything that they've got along the way so that they can consolidate it and create a manageable plan to deliver that outcome.
Yes. Now, with that being said, a lot of people don't understand what a small business restructure is. Okay. I have a number of insolvency firms and accountants, Hall Chadwick being one of them. We met at the last event they held. They're brilliant in that space. So if, once I go through everything and the solution is actually maybe a small business restructure, they will be then given to a trusted, reputable company to complete certain actions. Okay. Now, a part of that might be a finance element, and that's where I would actually obtain finance by bespoke lenders to then help the likes of Hall Chadwick or their accountant really get this all wrapped up and completed. But in this financial space, a lot of people don't even know where they can turn. So they end up in, either burying their heads in the sand. They end up going to a major bank who 9 times out of 10 will be declining them. Or they end up thinking, okay, the best way to do this is let's refinance the entire mortgage. But what they don't realise is by doing that, they're potentially going to be hit with a higher interest rate than the general public. So, look, there's loads of solutions and options. I guess it's just guiding people to the right companies and not a dodgy one that promises the world and delivers nothing.
And I think you've nailed that, because you're talking specifically about. Sorry, I'm looking at my hand as I'm tapping it on the table. The giggle here is what we tend to do when debt becomes great and it's problematic, and people don't really want to talk to us about the things that are causing us stress today. Like, I can't maintain my builder's license, I can't maintain my professional services license, whatever it happens to be. if I don't resolve this bit, so we try and think of them in isolation, when what we really should be doing is going, hey, let's look at our entire circumstances and review everything from A to B in order to understand what options are actually available to us. And so if I understand correctly, what you're talking about is saying, don't be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand. What you need to be doing is saying, let's look at everything, not just what the pain point is today. And then potentially there are more advantages in refinancing everything than trying to do it specifically on one piece. Because if you can incorporate the advantages of your secured debt, so your house that your family lives in, then you have a greater opportunity of delivering potentially a better financial result, a better interest rate result, where that 0.25 that they talk about up and down, all those sorts of things, becomes more important and more useful to you as the punter. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in a higher interest rate piece to deal with the specific problem that you've got today.
Now, this is where Wardle works with many debt collection firms, because if we get the pure facts of what the situation is, we can then relay that information in a very precise and coordinated fashion. So the lenders that we reach out to will actually look at the whole segment, not just this one issue. Do you know what I mean? Now, I don't know whether you found this in your space, but I'm going to be quite frank here. A lot of directors and a lot of people, they are not forthcoming with where they are financially. And the reason being is, from a very young age, Michael, you're taught never to talk about sex, politics, or money. Now, what people don't understand is the more open you are about these topics, the less likely you're going to end up in a shit. You know why? Because you're acknowledging that there's an issue that needs to be fixed. Okay. So a lot of people, honestly, they end up, I guess, they'd rather ignore than actually be proactive. And this is where we come in. We have those hard conversations when others won't.
So here's the really interesting question from my part, right? If we're turning around saying, hey, we're taught not to talk about these things, what are the rules? If you can think of 3 rules, what would those 3 rules be to say, hey, this is how you identify you've got a problem and then you're not talking about it? Especially when it comes to money, right?
Where do I start? The minute you start getting notices in the door and you're scared to actually open that piece of mail, there's an issue. The minute you're having a personal conversation with your partner or your family or your best friend, and you're having to explain why you're pissed off, angry, stressed out, and honestly it's because of the cash flow issues, that's a key identifying aspect that something needs to be fixed, right? The minute you start having personal marital issues, and I hate to be blunt, but you can't get it up in the bedroom because you're so stressed out about your bank balance, look, that's not rocket science.
No, you're 100% right. So I sort of look at it this way when we're dealing with Assure issues, right? Assure Global Plus issues. When we're talking to somebody, we're saying, hey, you need to collect this money tomorrow. I get it, right? You want this money in as quickly as possible, but it's going to take time, right? So we see that it takes about half, on average, it takes about half the amount of time that it's overdue in order to successfully collect it. But people need money normally quicker than that because they've come to us so late in the equation. So we talk about the same thing, right? Like, so we generally talk about, hey, are you not talking back, right? There's that whole psychological element that somebody's trying to talk to you and you're not talking back. If you're hiding from that conversation, it's going to be really hard to re-engage your creditors, because by the time you're coming back to them, their patience has run out, isn't it, right? Which is what you're talking about there. The second component, and you're right, what we tend to do is talk to our partners less, and it manifests in other ways, right? So you talked about getting it up. Well, that's a big thing, isn't it? It's that stress piece that comes with that, where we're going, rightio, what else is happening? So if we can better identify how we're reacting to the problem, then we've got more chance of going, hey, who can I talk to about the stuff? So it's not just about getting money in the door, it's about understanding how our money goes back out the door. So that whole cash flow cycle, right?
100%. Everyone in business is in this predicament. Cash flow is a real issue, but there's always something you can do about it. So with Wardle, we work with entities to obtain the finance needed to keep you afloat, prevent bigger issues occurring. And through Score Up, we work with with the lenders or the companies that have impacted you to try and negate that impact, and work with them so you don't end up with judgment enforcement or legal action against you. Because you've taken legal action against somebody else, and then others are taking legal action against you. It's actually counterproductive.
So if I sort of summarize what we've been talking about today, what we're talking about is don't just consider, and that was the fantastic part about this conversation, don't just consider who owes you money, but understand and really think about who you owe money to as well. And if there is a disconnect between the time when that money can come in because you've left it too late for that money to come in, and you're in that position where you're already too late on others, you've got to identify a better balance between those two people or those two bits and understand how you can manage A to B through your entire cash flow process. So don't just think about how you get money in, but think of how your money goes out and ask questions about, is there somebody who can help you deliver that outcome? And don't get too obsessed about what an annualized interest rate looks like. Actually find the right solution, the right tool, and the right path to deliver that financial outcome.
Absolutely. What you need to be doing is working with your collections company, your company, for example, making sure you've got a good collection strategy in place. And while that's actually got the wheels turning, make sure that you've got enough funds with, finance or a cash flow solution where you're not going to be impacted with interest rates going up or down regardless. You need to be thinking ahead, not just now. A lot of people 5 years ago that fixed their rate for 3 years at 2.9% were absolutely slaughtered when the rate stopped and they had to pay full flag at 6.57. So we need to be looking forward, finding that right balance, making sure that they're communicative with yourself and your team, and then seeking other options while that's happening.
Chinelle, I really appreciate your insights today. I've certainly taken a chunk away going, rightio, how do we actually position stuff with people at the back end to think about what do we do to manage that cash flow in between. As usual, if you've got any questions or you've got a question and want to connect to somebody, please don't hesitate to give us a call on 1300 624 247 or ping us on our website and we'll connect you to the right people. Thanks so much, Chinelle.
Thank you so much.